Well, thanks everybody for staying for the Quiz the Guru session this afternoon. This is the fourth one we've done now here in Coventry, and the plan for this session is to basically ask the experts pretty much anything that you like, not product related please, because that's not fair, but pretty much anything else regarding technology, trends, marketing, the benefits thereof, and very, very IP centric. Okay, so we'll go across the panel. I think if you'd like to introduce yourselves, tell us which company you're from and basically what your company does in a nutshell. So we'll start with that.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name's Alex Stevens. I work for Vista CCTV, Norbain's own brand of CCTV, and my current position is product specifier. However, I've got a good technical background.
Okay. I'm Joe White. I'm from Canon. We make cameras, we make network cameras. I'm business development manager and seconded for the next 6 months to the UK. And I've got no technical knowledge, so please don't ask me.
Good afternoon, my name is Indy Clare. Company Siqura, part of the TKH group. Siqura are experts in the migration to IP field. We have a full portfolio of products to offer an end-to-end solution, regardless of fibre, coax or UTP. We can help you migrate to IP.
My name is Andrew Denton from a company called Meyertech. Many of you will already have seen this morning that we're exponents of the ONVIF standard. We manufacture control solutions for CCTV, both analog and IP VMS systems.
Tony Aldridge from Comtrol. We do Ethernet switches. We're the bit in the middle between the camera and the VMS system. Background in serial technology to start with many years ago. Now moved on into serial across Ethernet and now into Ethernet switches as well.
Hi, my name is Ian Creary. I represent UTC Fire Security. We provide total solutions, options really across the access control, CCTV, transmission, fire and intrusion range. My role is pre-sales engineer for the CCTV transmission and access control ranges.
Okay, and finally, I guess me. I'm Paul Hennings. I'm the CEO of the IP UserGroup, operating in the UK. Our organisation has 2 further hubs, one in the US and one in Latin America, basically servicing the industry with our educational brief. So, shall we kick off? Are there any questions at all from the audience? You've got a host of knowledge here. Here we go.
I've got one regarding video analytics. What does the panel think regarding the benefit of analytics from a standalone software point of view as opposed to being built into the camera? Where do you see the future going? So I work with Meyertech, so we do cameras that have inbuilt analytics at the head, but also overlaid by software, and what your thoughts were on where you think the market's going, what the trends are really.
Okay. Well, shall we start off with our man from Vista, if he doesn't mind?
Yeah, I mean, we have some basic analytics in some of our cameras. However, it's not something I promote. I think they're more of a spectrum or have a gimmick. I know we recommend a company called AdPro who do the Presidium analytics, which I think is quite a professional product, and it does. I mean, it reduces false alarms. It's difficult, John. I need to know kind of what kind of analytics and how they work within your cameras. But personally, from experience, I'd always recommend the Presidium. Sorry, product.
Too late.
Yeah, advice.
Okay, Joe, what do you think?
There's room for both. From a Canon point of view, we do put analytics into our cameras. It's fairly comprehensive. It is there to be able to drive the camera. It can be driven by our own software or other people's software. VMS is going to be important going forward to develop bigger networks. You know, you're going to need that to be able to do analytics into that end of the VMS platform. We're going to see far more with footfalls and face recognition and everything else. That's not something I think you would overload the camera if you tried to do those sort of systems. So I think there's a market for both, is what I see.
Should we try using Indeed?
Sure, I think analytics is great. I think it's the future. I think cameras are going to get better and better and better and more powerful. I think the possibilities within the camera in the future will allow a huge growth in analytics possibilities. But it's one small word that covers a plethora of sins, actually. So it's really what you want to achieve out of analytics. I think today a lot of people will use analytics to reduce the amount of bandwidth that leaves the camera, so only sends information when it's pertinent, which is fine. If you want to do far more clever applications like face recognition or license plate recognition or anything along those lines, probably today best on the server. But I think the future will be on the camera. I see it's inevitable. I think this will be the differentiator between the real high-spec IP cameras and the cheap image-only cameras. And I think analytics will play a big role. And I think if there's going to be a growth market, it will be the analytics, in my opinion.
Okay, should we move on to Edgar with your on-grid platform?
Yeah, well, I mean, on-grid's obviously an interesting side to that. Obviously, allowing VMS systems to talk to the VCA on cameras through a standardised framework. But as far as the different types of VCA go, I think reiterating what people have said, it depends on what you look to do with it. If you're just looking for motion detection or tripwire, something fairly basic, then the camera will be fine to do that for you, and you may only look to get a very small bandwidth out of the camera when it's sat idle and it ramps the stream when it detects that motion and things like that. But certainly on the other side, as Indy and the others have mentioned, with the sort of the heavy-duty analytics, facial recognition, and some of the technologies they're coming up with now that looks at how a person acts and how they move and can work out whether they're planning to detonate a bomb or whether they're carrying a gun, things like that. There's obviously a lot more processing required for that. And whilst, like Indy says, the cameras may well get more and more processing power, whether they will ever catch up with the new technologies coming out in analytics is another question, because inevitably it's going to make the cameras more expensive the more processing you put into them. So certainly there's definitely still room for analytics, central analytics, as opposed to edge-based analytics.
Tony, over to you.
From the network side, we carry the data, and there's obviously a move from 10, 100 gigabit, 10 gigabit, and the more and more data that can be carried, the more clever analytics can be done with the images. The only other comment I'd make is that the whole of the IT industry is moving towards distributed intelligence, moving to putting a lot more processing power at the edge, and that may point you towards this type of analytics in the camera. Possibly with as someone suggested, the considerably more process-hungry stuff going on at the server at the VMS end.
Ian.
Right, I think everything's pretty much been covered, but I'm very much of the opinion that edge analytics will take a hold, but it will be for specific analytical requirements, such as tripwire and other such detection, verification type activities. For your facial recognition type operation, that's going to require much more processing power, and it may even require databases to link back to maybe police databases to pick up faces to be able to identify exactly who you're looking at, whether they're a threat or an issue. So there's going to be a requirement for both going forward as well.
I think it's very fair to point out at this stage as well that analytics, as they are at the moment, are really only there to assist the operator and not to replace the operator, and that the verification of an operator is still key to making the analytics work for you.
Sure. Can I come back on a point? Just thinking about it from a manufacturer's point of view, the one thing I'd obviously like to have is more consolidation amongst the VMS people out there. You know, because we've got to integrate, whether we do it through the Omniv platform or Omniv S, or we do it through driver integration. It's a nightmare for the manufacturer, because there's so many VMS applications that, you know, you've got to try and get, and it takes time, and it's money, and it's investment. So that my own belief is we will see consolidation of it, and that will give better analytics going into, more development going into, rather than some of the smaller companies that are around. And that's no disrespect to them, it's just the way the marketplace, I believe, will go.
Yeah, from my experience, and obviously I get an opportunity to see things that aren't directly surveillance or security orientated, utilising IP video for alternative applications, and that is an area where the analytics side of things, image processing, is going to be massive in the future. That's where people can begin to be creative with IP video outside of the security space. That will almost certainly be server-based. I know that Microsoft are working very, very hard in the retail sector to develop some quite sexy kit for basically profiling and analysing people within stores for marketing purposes, messaging, and as well as point of sale and the security side of things as well. So fundamentally, I think that server-based image processing, behavioural analysis, and that sort of thing will be a huge growth market, as Indy says. But horses for courses, if you're looking for basic tripwire type or traffic in the wrong direction for car parks, etc., I don't see why that can't be integrated into the camera itself.
You picked up an interesting point there, that it might be at some point in retail at least that the CCTV systems are less for security and more for behavioural analysis.
Yeah.
Got more to the marketing people than the security guards.
Just a point about retail, just because I sat in on one of these seminar sessions, you know, the figure they lose, and they call it shrinkage, I love the word shrinkage, it means things are being stolen, is in excess of $120 billion. So they really do need some intelligence and analytics going into that monitors behaviour, and, you know, things going into bags and everything else that an operator won't understand.
That's right. I mean, I look at it from the other side, but I work for an installing company. We do a lot of remotely monitored systems that are monitored by my colleagues' company here, and I mean, they much prefer analytics to movement detection devices, because they're far more, you can define them far more so than you can with an external PIR or a beam or whatever. So, I mean, from that point of view, from my point of view, analytics every time. Without that, it's got to be the future, and I think you would endorse that, wouldn't you?
And you see that in the camera, or?
Well, you know, I mean, at the moment, it's a server-based, or it's a you know, a box-based system. But as they become more and more reliable or more powerful within the camera, right?
That's the challenge for the camera manufacturer.
Absolutely.
It's the process and power you need to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's going to have a bearing on the cost of the piece of kit, but when you compare that with what you've got to do with now, currently with movement detection devices, you've got to get cable to them, you've got to get power to them. What's going to happen? I mean, with your devices, you know what I mean? With the switches there that are PoE, wow, from an installation point of view, from my company's point of view, it's a no-brainer.
Any other comments from the audience on that particular topic? I think one of the things you bring up, particularly with the monitoring side of things, the analytics, the triggering device, using the camera as a triggering device as opposed to a PIR or alternative alarm. And of course you've got verification, so because you have the video that goes with the trigger. And I'm sure that from a monitoring station point of view, that is an absolute, well, in the 21st century, it's an absolute must. Because otherwise, you know, what the hell can you do? And bi-directional audio. So, you know, it's all available. You know. And I think there's a lot of sex in that software. Yeah. And there's a lot of mileage, and that is going to be a huge growth area now that things are moving across onto the network, because it just opens it up much more than it would have been before.
Totally new world.
Okay, any other questions from the audience before I throw a curveball in?
With what I've heard is a lot of people are saying that on-bid compliant. Is it perceived that, like analog cameras, you can put a JVC camera into a Panasonic DVR and it will just work? Obviously, with IP cameras, you see issues and questions about that, but is it perceived that in a short period of time you will be able to buy anyone's camera and connect it to anyone else's NVR, and if it's on-bid compliant, will it work? Or is the intention just to be awkward in licensing to make it cost prohibitive so you end up...
Andrew, would you like to answer that one as you're the on-bid guru?
The theory certainly is, yes, that any IP camera could be put into any DVR or NVR, and it should work. At least the basics should anyway, and as the profiles move on, more functionality is added, then you should be able to make use of that functionality. I think the frameworks still need to be tightened up a little bit at the moment to make sure that compatibility is guaranteed. Because there is sometimes slight differences between different people's kit that does mean that although they both pass the test to be on-bid conformance, they don't necessarily work straight out of the box. But the theory certainly is that, well, going back to the analog, you buy a PAL camera, you connect it to a PAL monitor or a PAL recorder, it should work, and that's on-bid's trying to take us back to that point.
But do you perceive that people like Axis will make licensing an issue, that it will almost become prohibitive cost-wise? They will want to retain a vertical market even though they can be cost-compatible because they're on-bid compliant.
Are you meaning that they'll try to license on-bid, or...?
No, they're to utilise their camera outside their own NVR or another product within their brands. If you want to connect it to a Panasonic device, that you'll have to buy a different license to unlock it to work with a Panasonic device.
Well, I mean, that's certainly possible. That's the manufacturer's prerogative, how they sell and how they license their products. It may be that the likes of Axis could be big enough to do something like that.
I only chose their name because they're not here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit different with the likes of Axis and cases like that. Because they're so big and we see the cameras so often, then there tends to be an integration done to the Axis and Bosch type equipment anyway. Where the market really gains is if you want to go out and select cameras very specific to a requirement, or if you've got a very small budget and you need cameras on a budget that you're not going to find your budget eaten into by the manufacturer needing to do an integration at whatever the development cost for that is. You can select different products. It may be that Axis would shoot themselves in the foot in that case if they say that you've got to pay extra to use the on-bid framework on their cameras, that people will go out and will buy somebody else's cameras. There's always going to be people out there in a competitive market to undercut.
I think there are two questions I've thrown at you before, Andrew. I know it's not fair, but there is a marked difference between on-bid members and on-bid compliant product, the first thing. And my fear, probably based on looking backwards into peripherals around the computer market, is that you end up with the lowest common denominator. So you really get the bare bones in a compliant product. And what would your comments be to defend that?
Certainly, and I mean that's part of why they've gone through the bringing in the profiles, is so that you can tell what functionality you can actually obtain. One of the problems at the minute is that whilst the on-bid framework incorporates things like audio, if you simply state, oh, we don't support audio, then you don't have to prove conformance to it. and you can still have a conformant product on the basis that it just supports video. So there is obviously work that needs to be done in that area to make sure you get the functionality that you require.
Okay, any other questions from the audience before I interject? No? Okay. Well, I asked this question at each one of these events. Unfortunately, a couple of the guys have answered it in the past, but we'll spring it on them anyway. What do the panel and the audience see as the major inhibitors to the wholesale deployment of IP video or IP-based security solutions generally? And maybe I'll ask Andrew at the end there from Vista if he would.
It's a tough one, really. I think within the UK market, it's saturated already with analogue products, and we've also got an installer which is has a skill set to configure or set up analogue products. Now we're trying to give them, we're trying to move them into high definition video and get this video over IP. I think it's educating them is kind of perhaps what is slowing the transition to IP down. However, I think I've seen quite a lot of there are installers out there that have built relationships with IT guys, and I think when they get together, you kind of have the professionals from both worlds, and they, from experience, they've had the best, most professional installations I've seen. You've got a proper network infrastructure, and you've also got the guys who know how to get the best out of your video. So from my own personal experience, I think it is actually the skills of our installers that's slowing this market down.
Sure. I think one of the first things they see is perceived increase in cost of running IP versus analog. I think a lot of that's been broken down, but it's still something there. I've had it a few times. How much? And that's where it's coming from. It's also presenting the benefits of what an IP camera does. So many different things we talk about, analytics that go into it. We need to teach the marketplace those benefits. These forums are great for doing that, and it's requiring somebody from an analog background to come along and see that IP has some advantages to offer. And I won't do like other people do and say analog will die, because it won't die. There is a future for analog, and there's a future for IP, and it has to be embraced because it is going to go forward. The improvements that are being made in analytics will continue to happen. It will give increased benefits to end users, whether it's retail or whatever particular marketplace they're working. So that's the case for mine. It's technology that's scared of it as well. You've got these people, particularly electricians, and they're now to run out, cable, coax cable, and everything else. It's a different challenge. So there's an education process that we, as manufacturers, as forums, as everything else, that has to teach the marketplace. It's a good thing to have IP as well as analog.
Indy, over to you.
I think it's the reasons why there's been hesitation has changed over the years. When I was first in the market 4 or 5 years ago, I think there was an inherent fear of IP. People were just nervous about this new technology. They're very comfortable with analog, the click and play concept with their cameras. It was very easy to install. And I have to say, over the last 4 or 5 years, I think manufacturers have done a great job in trying to make IP products easier and easier to use. You mentioned OnViv. I think that's another tool that has been used to simplify IP installations, to make it easier and easier for people to use IP. I think also in the last couple of years, there's been a good fight back from analog suppliers to make their products more competitive. The HDSDI concepts to allow people to enjoy higher resolutions but still enjoy the ease of installation. So there is a bit of that. I also think there was a bit of a mistake 4 or 5 years ago where people were positioning IP with the intention that we would replace replace analog completely with IP in one go. And I think the costs were quite high, and that was a bit of a shock. And again, you know, manufacturers today are, and we're one of them, are saying, no, you don't have to do that, you can do it in steps, and you can decide your own path to migrate to IP. But I still believe some of those reasons for not migrating 5 years ago are still prevalent today. I think people are still a little bit nervous about IP, nervous about this new technology. They're very comfortable with analog and they like to stay with what they're familiar with. But I think as the market makes things easier and easier, I am confident that IP will be your choice in the future.
Down to the end for Ian, maybe you'd like to comment on that one.
Yeah, largely agree with what's already been said. I think education and training is going to be a key point in moving the traditional CCTV installer into the world of IP. There is certainly a fear of the unknown. IP, to many people, is considered the unknown. When you start talking about bandwidths and storage capacities and such like, it starts to scare people away. I think OnVIF is certainly going to help the process, because when we get to a point where, like analog, you can plug any camera into, should we get to that point, by the way, you can plug any analog camera into any analog DVR, that gives the installer an element of comfort. He's able to just choose whatever products he wants to go with other products. With IP, that isn't quite the case yet. That does cause concern, because I think from the installer's perspective, they're not sure what products to specify at the moment. That creates a complication, which is considered to be potentially an issue for them going forward, because of potential support implications. So obviously it's going to help, hopefully, as it goes forward. Education is going to help, training is going to help. The fact that there are options of maintaining analog infrastructure. If concerns about, I've spent all this money on analog infrastructure, I've got my cabling, I've got my analog cameras, I don't want to replace them all, thank you very much. Well, there's options now, there's encoders. You can use your analog cameras, bring them into an encoder, feed them into an NVR, and as those cameras fail, you can then switch them to IP. If you've got coaxial infrastructure, why not use media converters? Stick an IP camera on the end of a coax. You can have up to 4 or more IP cameras feeding down one coax, broken out at the other end. So there's the cost implication is an issue. IP cameras are still a bit more expensive. I think what they can offer is significantly improved over analog, and once the message is delivered, that should help ease that concern. But utilising the existing analog infrastructure and being able to still deliver an IP solution is going to be the one way forward.
I think it's down to us as manufacturers and systems integrators to educate the market. What will drive it is the sort of cost-benefit analysis. What's the benefits of reduced cable costs from PoE, the redundant ring topology, the data can go one way and go another way if there's a break. What's the benefit of the analytics? What's the benefit of the higher definition cameras, and so on and so on. And it's those benefits we've got to get across to the companies that are buying the systems to make it essentially a no-brainer to go down the IP route rather than staying with the analog route. Until we can get it to that it's a no-brainer point, then there always will be this division. And yes, you're right, the idea of I've got a bucket load, miles and miles of coax, you don't expect me to rip that out and put in Cat 5 cable, do you? The answer is of course no. Put a media converter at either end of it and run your Ethernet down your twin wire, down your coax cable. So it's got to be down to explaining, extolling the virtues and making it that no-brainer.
I think one of our presentations hit the nail on the head this morning with one of his slides. SNMP, TCP, UDP, RTP, RTSP. I think it just baffles the hell out of everybody at the end of the day, and nobody knows what to do, what to trust, and yeah, it all comes down to education, which is what we're here for.
I mean, I think from an installer's point of view, I mean, one of my biggest obstacles to overcome is the IT manager. When you're talking IP, he goes, oh, no, I can't put anything out of my network. It's going to need, what about the bandwidth, and what's it going to take up, and it's going to, what if anybody, crashes into it or, you know, sort of hacks into it. They're a major problem to overcome. You've got to win them over first. Your security manager is very, very keen for it. I mean, he's all for it, especially when you show them the quality. Quality wins it over every time. But your IT manager, wow. So
if you can win the IT manager over, then you've often got access to other things such as storage area networks, exactly. Things like that that could be utilised, you know, to improve the system at a very low cost.
Yeah. I think everybody sort of hit on the nail on the head with use what you've got there at the moment. You don't have to rip everything out and replace everything. If it's a brand new system, it is a bit of a no-brainer because, okay, if you've got the IT guy manager on your side and he puts, you know, a network point where he wants a camera or in that sort of area, the cost saving is phenomenal.
But then you're looking at virtualisation and storage area networks and things like that that can all be utilised to save cost on an installation.
Yeah. And of course, I think with the quality of the cameras, very often you don't need as many as you do analog. Because you know, the quality and the coverage.
Provided you can get the bandwidth.
Yes. I'll do my best.
That's where the IT managers tend to come unstuck. As soon as you say, well, this is what bandwidth I need, they're not quite so keen to hand that bandwidth over.
So how do you overcome that as a problem? You know, what is the way? What is the answer?
It's horses for courses again, isn't it? I think, you know, okay, you've got a full scene, megapixel, a zillion megapixel camera, which has got a full scene all the time. But do you need that full scene all the time? You've got areas of interest, so you only transmit the areas of interest at a higher frame rate than you would do for the overall scene. Overall scene once a second, and then normal sort of frames per second for the areas of interest. I think it's about managing the scene as much as anything else to help the IT guy feel more comfortable with that. So you're not going to send me this squillions of bytes down my network. You're only going to do that periodically. So the overhead on my network actually is nowhere near that. You're only sending me these areas.
So this is where the analytics comes in, and
yeah, and set up and just sort of working.
I mean, we've embraced the technology, you know, sort of right from the start, really, in all fairness. I mean, I can't remember the last time we sold a new analog system.
That's good for me to hear.
It's not actually unusual for integrators to put in a separate network for the CCTV setup, and then that overcomes all of the bandwidth issues. As long as you plan it right, you can use switches which will bundle gigabit together to give you multi-gigabit down the same piece of wire. So there's lots of techniques that can be used to create that much greater bandwidth.
What about this issue or problem that we're looking at? Okay, you can only go 90 metres and 99 metres before you've got to boost the signal.
I think that's been developed out as well now. I heard somebody talking this morning, I'm not sure if it was somebody here, but somebody was talking about 300 metres, developing switches that would transmit up to 300 metres.
Can you confirm that, sir?
We don't have any. Our switches are the standard 90, 100 metres.
Right.
But yes, there is the technology around. We're certainly looking at it.
Can I put a question at Mr. Meyertech? Because Meyertech have got a foot firmly in the IT camp and in the security applications area. How do you feel things are?
Yeah, I think to sort of start off by echoing what Alex said. Really, it's education, and with our customer base, there's two sides of it. We've got the traditional analog security installers, very active in their own little world. We'll put in whatever we used to put in, Samsung, Panasonic, dedicated macros, whatever. And now we're looking at IP, where we start. And it's them embracing how to design a network. And then it's our traditional infrastructure customers who know networks like the back of their hand, cabling not a problem, data centers not a problem, but how does an infrared light work, where do I put a camera? And we're in the process now of sort of